Hey, Magic in the Room listeners, this holiday season, we're doing something that's a little bit different. We're going to be sharing some audio essays by Chris, Hannah, and me. And so today, I hope you enjoy this audio essay by yours truly, Luke Friedman, me.
Magic is found in every room where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah, and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset, and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
On January 6th, 2021, I sent out a series of tweets. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I had been working in my little office building, which is detached from my house, and had gone inside to get myself some lunch and caught a glimpse into what was happening on the floor of the house as they were really kind of getting rolling, certifying the presidential election results. And we all know that how the rest of the day unfolded and that it was a little crazy and intense. And we're still as a country grappling with how do we make sense of this and where do we go from here? But in the moment, I kind of stumbled across these tweets a couple weeks ago. In the moment, I was trying to make sense of it. And so I went back to my office, trying to get back to work. And just in my searching, I pulled out this book by Edwin Friedman. Edwin Friedman was a family therapist who took family systems thinking, family systems therapy principles, and applied them to organizations, applied them to leadership. And he was really critical in making this transition from applying what was best practice in family therapy to these larger organizational groups. So he has a book called A Failure of Nerve, Leadership in the Age of the Quick Fix. And I pulled it out. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is so helpful that I decided to, tweet it out in my mind, trying to make sense of things and hopefully trying to help other people too. So I'm just going to read you this series of tweets. Insights into Chronically Anxious Systems from Edwin Friedman in A Failure of Nerve, Leadership in the Age of the Quick Fix. Quote, in any society, no matter how advanced its state of technology, chronic anxiety can induce an approach to life that is counter-evolutionary. Employing 5 characteristics of chronically anxious personal families, I will illustrate how those same characteristics are manifest throughout the greater American family today, demonstrating their regressive effects on the thinking and functioning, the formation and the expression of leadership among parents and presidents. Those 5 characteristics are, number 1, reactivity, the vicious cycle of intense reactions of each member to events and to one another. Number 2, herding, and this might be a new one for those of you listening, herding, a process through which the forces for togetherness triumph over the forces of individuality and move everyone to adapt to the least mature members. So I want to give a note for a second on herding. For me, the best word picture around herding is if you've ever seen videos, especially drone footage of a sheepdog herding sheep. That's the idea that Friedman is trying to get across here. This idea that the sheep are doing their own thing. They're happy, they're eating, they're taking care of themselves. And then along comes this loud, noisy, exuding energy presence that somehow gets them to stop what they're perfectly happy doing and go move to be doing something else, go into a pen where I assume they don't want to be, right? Now, you have to forget a little bit of the metaphor. We tend to think of dogs as more intelligent as sheep. So forget that part and just look at the energy, right? What Friedman is saying when he says herding, a process through which the forces for togetherness triumph over the forces for individuality and move everyone to adapt to the least mature members. What he's saying by adapting to the least mature members is that whether it's families or teams or larger organizations, sometimes the least regulated, the least mature member of that team, that system, will, because they aren't regulated, they don't have self-control, be loud enough, noisy enough to direct the activity and the focus of the rest of that team. And when we don't have clear boundaries, when we don't have a clear vision as leaders, we become susceptible to being directed in this way by the least mature members of the teams that we serve. Okay, so that's what hurting is. Then I go on to quote Friedman. Number 3 of these 5 characteristics of chronically anxious systems. Number 3, blame displacement, an emotional state in which family members focus on forces that have victimized them rather than taking responsibility for their own being and destiny. Number 4, a quick fix mentality, which is a low threshold for pain that constantly seeks symptom relief rather than fundamental change. And number 5, lack of well-differentiated leadership, a failure of nerve that both stems from and contributes to the first 4. End quote. And then I ended with this in this kind of series of tweets. I said, I hope this helps give you words if you're like me, amazed at the palpable anxiety you can see on the floor of Congress today. The concept of hurting is especially helpful in explaining the actions of those dissenting to the Electoral College vote. So I sent this out, just trying to make meaning for myself. And then at some point later on, got an alert on my phone, saw the news, whatever it was, went back in and turned the TV on and learned that about 30 minutes after I had sent this, that joint session of Congress went into recess so that they could evacuate the Capitol building because it had been breached. And in all of the experience that a lot of us shared following that, I kind of forgot about this, trying to find meaning and make sense of things, but reading back on it today, I was like, oh, it feels a little prophetic, not from me, but from Friedman. This person who was an expert in understanding family systems. And so today on the podcast, I want to talk a little bit about what Friedman saw as the way to stand firm against some of these chronic system pressures. And I want to find some takeaways that we as leaders can apply to our own lives as we seek to not suffer from a failure of nerve, but to be able to lead effectively even when the systems we're leading are chronically anxious in many times. So first off, a little bit of information about Friedman. So Edwin Friedman was born in 1932, and he died in 1996, which his book, A Failure of Nerve, was published about a year later after his death. And so they pulled together some of his seminal works and some of his, current thinking that he had developed and published it. And he was a rabbi. He was a family therapist. He had moved into becoming a leadership consultant that worked with a lot of communities of faith, but also government and larger corporate entities. And he based a lot of his work on Murray Bowen's family systems theory. So if you're a therapist out there, you probably recognize Bowen, that name, and family systems theory. And what Friedman really pioneered was applying those ideas to organizations. One of my favorite Friedman quotes is, he says, "The colossal misunderstanding of our time is the assumption that insight will work with people who are unmotivated to change." Man, what a great quote. The colossal misunderstanding of our time is the assumption that insight will work with people who are unmotivated to change. How many times do we see that? We think we have a great plan. We go to someone, we say, hey, look, we're going to do this differently. We're going to change. The times are changing. We need to change with it. And look, here's the bullet points. Here's how I'm going to get you to where you need to be to adopt this new approach, to go this new direction. And we think that logic, we think that insight, we think that just explaining it more is going to get that person to buy in. But what I find as a consultant over and over again is that the person who doesn't believe that change is positive, the person who doesn't believe that there's a win-win in the universe, that we can grow together and learn together and win together, is not someone that my insights will move. It requires different behavior from me as a leader to bring them along. So Friedman took this idea and worked in lots of organizations applying these concepts. And the key one that I want to focus on today is this idea of differentiated leadership. So first, let's start off with differentiation. What is it? Friedman says differentiation is the lifelong process of striving to keep one's being in balance through the reciprocal external and internal processes of self-definition and self-regulation. So what does he mean by that? He means that differentiation is not a goal state. It's not a target. It is a process. So to become a differentiated leader, one must only embark on the process of differentiation because there's not an endpoint. In my spare time, I like to do outdoors things. And, if you climb a mountain, especially if you climb a big mountain, it's hard to avoid this trap of false summits. You're hiking. And I know for me, maybe I've been hiking several hours and I finally get up above tree line. So I just see this barren mountain above me. And there's rocks and I can see the trail moving up and I see the top of the mountain. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm getting close. I'm almost there. And, it might take me another 20, 30 minutes and I'm just high altitude, not having enough oxygen. I'm working hard. I think I'm almost there. And then I kind of get up and crest a little rise. And all of a sudden I realized that what I was seeing that whole time was just a little bump in the road that was hiding my view of what the actual summit was. And on some hikes, that can happen to you 2, 3, 4 times where these false summits attract our attention and we head towards them. And what Friedman says about differentiation is that we shouldn't fall into the trap of believing that false summits are the peak. We shouldn't say, oh, if I can just get here as a leader, I will have arrived. I'll be there. Everything else is downhill. It's easy. That's not how it works. Differentiation is a lifelong process of 2 things: self-definition and self-regulation. Self-definition, we talk a lot on this podcast and with our clients about what is our purpose. If I'm an individual, what is my individual purpose? My North Star, the highest possible good I can achieve in this world, the best possible contribution I can make to the people around me. What is my purpose? If it's an organization, what is our shared purpose? What's the North Star for our team, for where we're going? What is the highest possible good we can achieve, the best possible contribution we can make to the world around us? That's purpose. And when Friedman says differentiation is partly a process of self-definition, he means it's partly becoming clear about what our purpose is. Who am I uniquely? Who am I in a way that's different than the people around me? What are my values that are unique just to me? That's self-definition. And then the second process is self-regulation. And self-regulation is simple. It's just aligning our behaviors every day, our priorities, what do we spend our time and resource on, aligning that with who we have defined ourselves to be. So if we are consistently defining ourselves, becoming clear on who we are and where we're going and what our values are, at the same time we're self-regulating and aligning ourselves, aligning what we do, aligning our behaviors with that person we have set out to become. So differentiation, self-definition, self-regulation. Sometimes it can be difficult to focus on differentiation objectively because it really just is the capacity to become one's self out of oneself right now. How do I become more me than I was yesterday? And how do I become intentional around that? That's differentiation. More a process than it is a goal. Now, why is this important? When we go back and look at those 5 principles of a chronically anxious system: reactivity, vicious cycle of intense reactions of each member to events and one another; herding, process through which the forces for togetherness conquer the forces of individuality and pressure everyone to adapt to the least mature members of the group. Number 3, blame displacement, right? We don't look at what we have power over. We look at environmental factors that we say, oh, it was because of this or because of him or her or whatever. Number 4, that quick fix mentality. I want the fix now. I don't want to dig into root cause. I don't have time for that. We need a technical solution today, right? Differentiation, knowing who we are uniquely, is the antidote to those symptoms of that chronically anxious system, chronically anxious team. So only when I know my purpose, only when I know my values in a really clear, concrete way, and only when I'm working every day to align my behaviors and priorities with that purpose and those values, can I have the clarity to not react. Right? We're going to have things that invite us to react every day. Someone that we care about that says something hurtful, something that we see in the news, right? A billion things every day, all of these pieces of stimulus coming into us. And if we don't have clarity, if we don't have a foundation in who we are, it's very difficult not to get pulled into that cycle of reactivity. When we think about this concept of herding, well, it's hard to not be herded by someone who is so dysregulated that they are causing chaos all around them, right? I think the easiest example that a lot of us are familiar with is parenting. We see families out there, right? We all know these families where there's some kid who's calling the shots. That kid is the least mature member of that system or that family. But because they are willing to be the loudest, create the most chaos, have demands, they move around everyone else, just like that sheepdog moving the sheep into the pen. And so only if I, as a parent, am clear about my values and clear enough to say no, clear enough to say not right now, clear enough to say we are not doing that, because only then can I stop that cycle of hurting. And is there going to be pain? Yes. There will be short-term pain if we set a boundary. Right. But Friedman's point is, without that journey of self-differentiation as a leader, it's very difficult to set that boundary, very difficult to take the short-term pain. Right. We're only able to take that pain when we're doing it for a reason. If we don't have a clear purpose that we're working towards, why would we take the pain? Right. But once we have that goal, okay, great. I can endure this for a little while for the sake of my larger goal. Quick fix mentality. Here's how I think about that. I think about a quick fix as like an easy path. And we know the people who try and sell us easy paths all the time, right? Easy paths are the way of this world. The easier I can make a path for someone, the more likely it is that they're going to walk down it. And for me, I mentioned I like being outside. I think about game trails, right? The trails that animals use day to day in the forest. Now, if you've been outside much and been in the woods, you know that animals choose the easiest way. You can find a game trail along most ridges, along the easiest way to get from somewhere high down to where there's a water source, from one food source to another. Topographically, the easiest path is going to be where there's a trail. And for me as a human, and I've seen this in leading backpacking trips with students, if someone's lost and they don't know where they're going and they stumble across a trail, they're going to follow it. Even if it doesn't go in the right direction, right? I'm stumbling through the woods. I find this trail. Oh, thank goodness. There's a trail to get somewhere. It doesn't really matter if it's where I was trying to go. It's at least going to get me somewhere without me, struggling through thorns and over boulders and whatever else. Only when I have a clear coordinate that I am pushing towards, only when I know where I am right now and where I'm trying to go, can I effectively ignore the easy path and press on towards my goal. I think that's a great picture of differentiation. When we talk about defining ourselves, defining our purpose, defining our values, to add another metaphor to it, it's getting clear on these are the coordinates to which I am moving. This is the bearing in which I'm going. I don't care about where the trail's going. I am going here. And let me just warn you, it's not an easy path. Not an easy path. The effort and energy required to bushwhack through the woods, exponentially more than to walk along a clear path. But I would argue that it's worth it. It's worth it to go somewhere worth going. And I think that for leaders, this is where it gets really personal, because I can't tell you what coordinates you should be aiming towards. I can't tell you what direction you should set that compass for and press forward through the brambles and forging rivers and over mountains. It's work that you have to figure out. The only thing I can tell you is that it's work worth doing. And I believe that for leaders that want to have an impact on the world, that want to leave things better and different, this step of self-differentiation, of clarity around purpose, clarity around values, is a step that needs to be taken. And again, not a step, a process. When you're hiking through the woods, it's not, you don't look at your compass once at the beginning of the day and then, okay, I think that's the direction. I'm heading that way, right? You're constantly checking it. Because the terrain, the surroundings, it changes and it can confuse you. And eventually you might say, I thought I wanted to go there, but look over there. Look how amazing that is. Look at that lake up there. I know I was going to go to this ridge, but look at that lake. I want to go head that direction. Navigating with intention is a process that we continually refine. Okay, so what's our point today? The point today is that we as leaders have a choice whether we're going to be intentional or unintentional. What do I mean by that? We have a choice if we're going to notice the path that we're currently on. Notice where we are in this world. Look up from our phones. Look up from the back of the person we're following. Right? Not just stare at the back of someone's head and keep trudging in line wherever that is. We have a choice to pause for a moment and say, I'm experiencing some things that I'm not okay with. Maybe I'm experiencing someone who I think is not very regulated. They're not very mature, and they really are calling the shots on my team or in our office or in our organization or in my family. And I want to change that, but the only way to change that is to have some sort of clear vision for myself that allows me to have the boundaries required to say, no, I'm not going that way. I'm not going the way you're hurting me towards. I'm not going the way that you're asking me to react towards. I'm going my way. And the risk here is that when we think about this, I have this special, unique thing that's just me, my purpose, my values, my vision, where I'm going. We don't want to fall into that trap of saying, this is a one-person show. It's just me, and I'm going to get where I'm going by myself. And I don't need anyone. I don't really want to go along with anyone else. That's not what I'm saying at all, because we know from the science of psychology and performance that people really want three things. They want autonomy. They want to be able to master things. They want to grow and develop over time and get good at stuff. and they want to be a part of meaningful relationship and connections. So what I am saying is that we should take ownership of how we are going to have those needs met. There's a lot of ways to be in relationship with people to meet that human need. And I think all of us should be thinking about, how am I connecting with and how am I getting my need met for community, for connection? And we should take responsibility for saying, you know what, I'm going this way. I'm going this direction. These are my boundaries. These are the behaviors I'm going to accept in the people around me and not accept in the people around me. And so, hey, everyone who wants to go that direction, you are welcome to go with me. Come on, let's go. And I can be in relationship with you while you're on your journey and you're on your leadership path, while I'm on mine, because it looks like we're pretty much going in the same direction. And that's where there's a little bit of a paradox here. We can only truly connect with people and belong with a community that's doing meaningful work together, or that is an effective family together, or whatever it is, when we've actually done the work to define for ourselves what our non-negotiables are. Once we define what our individual non-negotiables are, what our individual purpose is, it opens us up to connect with people with shared value, with shared vision. Okay, so let's get practical. So you're a leader. You have influence over other people. Could be in lots of contexts. What do you do with this? Like, the first thing is just reflect. Reflect. There are a lot of challenges that leaders face every day. People have demands of us. People come to us with things that they ask us to react to. They invite us into power struggles. They invite us into dynamics that are not healthy. They invite us into activity that is not aligned with our values and with our goals. They invite us into taking responsibility for their issues. They invite us into pursuing quick fixes to things that have really deep root causes that a quick fix isn't going to help. So step one is just reflect. What is my non-negotiable? What kind of team do I want to lead? What kind of team do I want to be on? And I would say start with this. Am I comfortable having a boundary? Am I comfortable telling someone, I think you're wrong? Am I comfortable saying, hey, everyone, I know you guys are talking about going to lunch here, but I'm going to go to this other place. If anyone wants to go, you're welcome. I know that's a little bit of a simplistic example, but the feeling that elicits, you're all going to go there. I'm going to go here. If anyone wants to come with me, you can. We layer all of these social rules on top of that, and you can feel our stomachs even nodding up sometimes, imagining that. Like, oh gosh, what a jerk move. Is it? Is it a jerk move? Or is it clarity around what I want and where I'm going? And where we eat lunch, most of us, that's not important to us. But let's imagine for a moment that there's someone who is intolerant of some kind of food, and they've spent years going with everyone else to lunch and never saying, no, I've got to go this other place because there's nothing there on the menu for me. Only when they get clear and say, this is where I'm going. This is what I need to be my best self, to have the best impact, to produce the best work. Right? Only when they're willing to stand up and have some sort of boundary are they enabled to create something that really only they can create in this world. So I hope that's helpful for you. And I want to go back to, January 6th, 2021. I don't know. You're probably sick of it like I am, news about it and whatever else, people talking about it. But what I want to go back to is the feeling of what is happening here. What is happening? Things aren't right. Things aren't right. And when I go to Friedman at a failure of nerve, I was like, oh, this is what's happening. There's no leader here in this system willing to stand up and say, that behavior is out of bounds and we will not engage with it. Everyone feels like they have to make concessions and concede and do all of these things instead of saying, I am not playing your game because I'm doing something more important over here. And politics, whatever, it's a whole unique thing. But think about you. Like, that's the point of this. Where is it that you are trapped in some sort of dysfunctional thing that is not maximizing your potential impact on this world? You are the only one that can do something about it. You're the only one that can move. You're the only one. And the path is by defining who you are and what you want and taking some steps there. Remember, differentiation as a leader is a process. It's not an end point. So we define ourselves. Then every day we wake up and we align our behaviors with who we want to become and who we are at our core. That's the journey I'm on. And I don't do it perfectly, but man, it's a good journey. It's a hard journey. It ain't easy, but it's good. It's good. It feels right to me. And, here I am. I'll be 42 in January. I've still got a little bit of life left in me, I guess, but I feel like I'm at this point where I can start to experiment with this, every year a little bit more. Every year get a little bit more comfortable about being weird, about being me, and saying there are things that I have to offer that no one else has to offer. And there are things that I'm really bad at that other people are good at. And me trying to chase being good at those things, it doesn't really work. So I would just encourage you, whether you're getting ready to turn 42 like me, or you're just out of school and you're like, oh, what is my career going to look like? Who am I going to build a family with? Or whether you're a little bit further down the road and you're thinking about, how do I transition into something after a career that feels really meaningful and real? It starts with you defining yourself. So here's to those people who have defined themselves, who show up every day as courageous leaders. I aspire to be one of you. And let's all go and link arms as we're all on our journeys. I think a lot of our journeys are aligned, right? And the more clear we get about where we're going, the more aligned we can be. The more we can say out loud, this is what I care about, the more the other people that care about those things can link up with us. So let's embrace this paradox, influence others more by starting this journey of differentiating ourselves as leaders. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope you have an amazing day.
Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Bratteroo, and Luke Freeman, and produced by Ben West. Theme music is by Evan Grimm. Title track Fake Love available on Apple Music. And this podcast was recorded at Storycatcher Studio with video and audio editing and production support by Brad O'Hara and Alicia Crum, with inspiration, strategy and technical support by yours truly, Neil Hughes. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and remember, previous episodes are available at magicintheroom.com.